of your lunchtime update. I'm Garreth Edwards. Let's talk international relations and diplomacy and all those good things. Why? Because of what's happening with the US President Donald Trump. Our country's diplomatic and economic relations with the US still very much in the balance. The question is, which way is it teetering and who really is in control here? The administration of Trump raising a number of issues. Most notably and most spoken about has been the Land Expropriation Act, our participation in BRICS, and the country's genocide case against Israel at the ICJ, International Court of Justice. What a pleasure. Dr. Mmabatho Mongae is a data analyst with governance insights and analytics programming at Good Governance Africa, looking into how this balancing act is getting trickier and trickier. Doctor, wonderful to have you on the show.
Thank
you for coming in. What is your data telling you? If I give you that entire synopsis I just gave our viewers, where do you begin to look for data points, or how do you analyze it? What stands out for you?
Yeah, I think two things that stick out, and actually at the forefront of this discussion, is the economics and politics and how the international system works. The two cannot ever be analyzed in isolation to each other. I mean, fact of the matter is, not only is the USA South Africa's second biggest trading partner, but from a political perspective, South Africa is one of the USA's key partners. And in a world whereby allies is the name of the game, the USA can't afford to lose key partners, and in the same breath, economically speaking, especially where South Africa finds itself in, it cannot stand to lose having, USA as a key partner.
So we both need each other. It almost feels like we're sitting in a case of mutually assured destruction if somebody doesn't do something. So what, in your mind, based on your data and analytics, what needs to happen? Someone's got to put out the olive branch first.
Yeah. And that's a tricky thing, right? Because for South Africa, let me start with South Africa, it's three things at play: national interests, regional, and then international interests. From a national level, economically speaking, we see the dire situation. We see the unemployment figures. We see the issue with, land expropriation, which has been a contentious issue since '94, perhaps has gained more momentum as the years have gone by. Another key thing, 2026 local elections are happening. We saw what happened in the 2024 national elections. So next year it's anyone's game.
It's next year already, can you believe it?
Imagine that. And and then from the USA, we see what's happening, Trump 2.0. And right now he's got nothing to lose. So, the next 4 years are going to be quite interesting.
That's a dangerous position for a global leader to be in, because when he has nothing to lose, he's going to make us work for it. So who works for it here? Who has to do the hard yards is what I'm asking, do you think?
Given the USA's dominance, economic dominance that is, South Africa might find itself having to bend over if that is what it decides to do. But thus far, especially given, the latest developments that have happened, South Africa's response has been, we're not going to change the bill. We're not going to revise our foreign policy, because at the heart of it, I wouldn't even say that it's the land expropriation bill that's the content. Perhaps it's the one that exploded or ignited an existing flame that predates. It was the straw that
broke the camel's back.
Exactly, and it predates Trump's administration. We saw with the Biden administration, the various contentious issues. At the heart of it, I would arguably say, is South Africa's strengthened allies with what the USA deems as its enemies. Whether or not it's fair or not fair is a whole different discussion, but given the USA's economic position, it might have to bend over. However, what differentiates South Africa's position now is that it's got a bit of leverage. You now have, the international system is now characterized by emerging powers. South Africa's participation in BRICS, South Africa's strengthened relations with countries such as Iran, Saudi Arabia, Russia, China, and so forth. Those are creating alternatives. And if the USA continues to try and alienate South Africa, you might find South Africa leaning or further strengthening its allies or relations with these countries.
Your verbiage is interesting. You're saying leaning or strengthening. There's some commentary on social media, which I don't take seriously at the best of times anyway, saying that it's time to leave AGOA. Let's go all in for BRICS. It can't be as simple as that, though.
Exactly. It's easier said than done. Sure. Because if we putting forth the argument of just leave AGOA, at what cost? Who stands to lose? We have to, who are the winners and losers? Farmers, it's not just farmers. Farmers employ X amount of individuals.
The agricultural sector.
Exactly. Yeah. Are we willing to pay more for certain goods and services? So sometimes we have to analyze who are the winners and losers. And as ordinary citizens and various actors, are you willing to actually pay the cost of just leaving? It's easier said than done. Easier.
From a governance perspective, literally from a good governance perspective, has this kind of governance around this issue from South Africa's side been good for Africa or bad for Africa? Because we had that, I can't call it a Twitter war anymore, it's X now, the X posts between the different governments. It felt very knee-jerky to me, and then everyone calmed themselves down. But there was a bit of damage done there, wasn't there?
Yeah. You know what's quite interesting is that I would say before Ramaphosa's administration, you had, South Africa's position, it's not new. We saw with Mandela's administration, we saw with Mbeki's administration, the ability to maintain relations with nations that have got opposing ideological perspectives. Right now, the role of social media, various other factors that shape relations between countries and states, and emerging alongside the emergence of nationalism and polarizing politics is more increasingly we're finding that politicians don't feel the need to be politically correct. And hence why, platforms such as, Twitter make it easy to just, if you disagree, while the USA can go to hell. Diplomacy 101. Those kinds of reactions, especially if they knee-jerk reactions, as you've mentioned, they may not always sit well, especially from a diplomatic perspective.
As I say goodbye to you, what needs to happen next? Who's going over to the other person's house with a cup of tea and some biscuits and start having a conversation? Do we make the first move? Does Trump make the first move? I can't see him doing it.
Yeah.
It's going to have to come from us. I think you agree. And what does that look like?
Yeah. You've mentioned it right there. South Africa's the one that's going to make the move. And I think that in South Africa's recent response, especially downplaying the USA sending a junior delegate, to be like, no, it's not a USA boycotting. I think that is South Africa somewhat trying to change its posture or trying to soften up its posture, especially given the various political parties from the ANC that is initial response to Trump and his commands.
So it's going to be us first?
I think so.
Someone's going to make the first move.
I think so.
Doctor, thank you very, very much for coming in. I hope to speak to you again. I love her insights on this. Dr. Mmabatho Mongae, data analyst with Governance Insights and Analytics program at Good Governance Africa. They look at the ramifications, the possible scenarios, and how it could play out. I'm very grateful for the doctor coming in to join us today. Now,